It was one of those Sundays that felt too good to ruin. You know the kind. Roast chicken fresh out of the oven, the air still carrying the faint smell of thyme and butter, laughter from the dining room echoing off the hardwood floor. Both families had gathered at our home, and for a brief few hours, it actually felt like peace was possible. My wife, Rachel, had spent the morning flitting between kitchen and dining room, cheeks flushed with wine and heat. She was radiant in that soft yellow dress, the one that clung to her in the way cotton only does when it's freshly worn, hugging her hips and swaying as she moved. My mother had complimented her 3 times, each one more saccharine than the last. They always shared a strange bond, Rachel and my mom. Closer than I ever expected, closer than what seemed normal. I used to think it was sweet. I was just finishing my conversation with Rachel's father about retirement plans and lake cabins when I realized I hadn't had dessert. Everyone else was still seated, sipping coffee or bourbon. I slipped away toward the kitchen, expecting the clatter of dishes or maybe Rachel humming to herself while plating pie. Instead, I heard silence. The door swung open without a sound, and for a breath of a second, no more, I thought I was hallucinating. My wife was kissing my mother. Not a peck. Not a mistake. This was slow, deliberate. Their bodies were pressed flush against the counter, mouths locked, Rachel's hand cupping the side of my mother's face like you would a lover's. It was the kind of kiss that made time lose all logic, the kind that betrayed depth, history, desire. The plate I was holding slipped from my hand and shattered on the tile floor, the sound as sharp as a gunshot. They broke apart instantly. My mother was the first to look up, her lipstick smeared, pupils blown wide. Rachel turned a beat later, her mouth still parted, breathing hard. Her face drained of color when she saw me. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stood there, heart pounding like a war drum, trying to form a sentence, trying to believe this was something other than what it so obviously was. "Ethan," my mother said, reaching toward me as if that made sense. As if her hand on my arm would fix the grotesque twist of reality I'd just walked into. But I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I didn't even look at them. I turned. I walked out of that kitchen, past the table of unsuspecting family still laughing about something someone's uncle had said. I walked straight upstairs, grabbed my coat, my keys, and I left. I drove with no destination, just forward motion and disbelief tangled like wires in my chest. I kept replaying that image, Rachel's hand in my mother's hair, their mouths exploring, hungry, familiar. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't the first time. I parked outside a 24-hour gas station and just sat there. I stared at the dashboard until the glowing clock felt like it was mocking me. 9:42 p.m. That kiss had happened less than 30 minutes ago. My life had unraveled in under a sitcom's runtime. I checked my phone. Nothing yet. No missed calls. No frantic texts. Good. Let them stew. But I couldn't stop the flood of questions. How long? Why? And how the hell did I not see it? The pieces started to slot together like cursed Tetris. The way my mother always stood too close to Rachel when they cooked. The weird, overly enthusiastic hugs. The girls' nights that suddenly became more frequent. The way Rachel would come home flushed, sometimes giddy, sometimes oddly quiet. God, had it been going on under my nose the whole time? I replayed memories with new eyes. Our wedding day, where my mother and Rachel cried into each other's shoulders like sisters. The way Rachel once joked, "If I didn't marry you, I might have married your mom." I had laughed. Jesus Christ, I had laughed. My hands were shaking. Not from rage, not yet. From betrayal. From the kind of betrayal you can't process because it's layered. Your wife and your mother. The two women who were supposed to be the anchors of your life, your compass points, colliding into each other like stars going supernova. And I was just the ash left behind. The sickest part? There had been attraction between them. I'd seen it now, unfiltered. That wasn't a mistake. That was desire. Rachel hadn't just cheated on me. She wanted her. My mother wanted her back. And now, I had no idea who the hell either of them really were. I didn't go back home that night. I booked a motel room with faded curtains and a slow drip in the bathroom sink. I sat on the edge of that bed, phone still silent, until exhaustion took me under. But even in sleep, I saw their lips pressed together, hands exploring territory that should never have been crossed. That kiss changed everything. Not just the marriage. Not just my family. Me. I didn't go home the next day. I didn't go to work either. Instead, I sat in the motel room, the curtains half drawn, letting in just enough light to remind me I was still alive. My phone buzzed sometime afternoon. It was Rachel. Rachel, please talk to me. Please. I stared at the screen. She didn't try to explain. Not yet. Just that. Pleading. Pathetic. Then another. Rachel, you don't understand what you saw. It wasn't like that. It just happened. We didn't mean for you to see it. I laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh that didn't even sound like mine. We didn't mean for you to see it, as if the betrayal didn't exist until I had the audacity to witness it. I tossed the phone across the bed and stared at the ceiling. I kept waiting for the panic to hit, for the tears, or the screaming, or the raw, animal rage. But nothing came. Just this emptiness. I felt like a ghost in my own life. Around 3 p.m., another message buzzed through. Rachel, I love you, Ethan. I don't want to lose everything over a moment of confusion. Can we talk, please? Confusion. That word. That fucking word. You don't make out with your husband's mother in the kitchen while the family's eating pie and call it confusion. That was something else. That was something darker. Something rooted. I didn't respond. I couldn't. So I turned off my phone completely. That night, the dreams started. They weren't violent or even dramatic. Just off. I dreamed I was back in the kitchen, holding the plate of pie. But this time, it wasn't Rachel and my mom kissing. It was Rachel and some faceless man. And I couldn't move. I just stood there, plate in hand, unable to speak, to scream, to even blink. When I woke up, drenched in sweat and tangled in the cheap motel sheets, I realized something that chilled me more than the dream itself. I wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep inside me, I had expected betrayal. Not like this, not incestuous and surreal, but something ugly. The day dragged. I went out only once, to grab food from the gas station next door. Microwave burritos and orange soda. The dinner of the damned. The clerk gave me a look, like he recognized the look of a man unmoored from his own reality. When I turned my phone back on that evening, there were 14 missed calls, 8 from Rachel, 6 from my mother. I didn't listen to any of the voicemails. But I read the texts. Rachel, you left without saying anything. I don't even know what you're thinking. I didn't plan for it to happen. It just did. Rachel, please come home. Let's talk. We owe each other that. Rachel, it's not what you think. There's a history. A context. I can explain. Ethan, don't shut me out. A history. Those words. That meant it wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't a drunken kiss in a weird moment of vulnerability. There was history. And I hadn't even been invited to that conversation. My mom's texts were shorter. Colder. Mom, Ethan, we need to speak. This is a family matter and should stay within the family. Mom, I'm sorry for how you found out. But I won't be shamed for who I am. I hope in time you'll understand. Mom, please don't do anything reckless. We can fix this. Fix this. What the hell were they even thinking? Were they delusional enough to believe that a sit-down chat over tea would undo the image of their lips locked in the place I once believed was sacred? I didn't reply to either of them. I couldn't bring myself to form words. And the house I grew up in, the one Rachel and I had moved into after our wedding, felt like a haunted tomb in my mind. Every room now tainted. Every memory corrupted. The worst part? I started imagining them together. Not just the kiss, but more. Touching. Whispering. Laughing. Sneaking glances across the room during Thanksgiving dinner. All the moments I thought were warmth between two women I loved, suddenly recontextualized as flirtation, lust, secrets. Was it happening while I slept upstairs? While I worked late? Were they intimate on my goddamn couch? I began pacing the room, chewing my nails until they bled. My world had folded in on itself like origami set on fire. I thought about going back. Not to talk. Just to see. Maybe gather my things. But even the idea of stepping foot in that house made my skin crawl. Instead, I booked another night at the motel. And then another. 3 days passed. No more text from Rachel. Just one final message from my mother. Mom, you don't have to run from us. We still love you. We are still your family. That hasn't changed. I threw the phone against the wall so hard the screen cracked. Yes, it has. Everything had changed. I wasn't just running from the people who broke me. I was running from the version of myself that allowed it to happen without even suspecting a thing. And now, I couldn't breathe in the house I was born in. Couldn't sleep in the bed where Rachel once held me after funerals, after dreams, after sex. I couldn't do any of it. I was a ghost in the life I built. And all I could do was disappear. The motel room had started to feel like a second skin, itchy, tight, and smelling vaguely of bleach and old regrets. The kind of place where you expect secrets to rot in the walls. 3 nights turned into 5. I'd memorized the cigarette burns in the carpet, the way the faucet sputtered before running, the rust-colored stain on the ceiling shaped like a horse's head. It was miserable, but it wasn't home, and that made it bearable. I hadn't spoken to anyone since I left. Not a soul. Until the knock. It came just after noon on the 6th day. I hadn't eaten anything but vending machine chips and soda in 24 hours. I was in boxers and a t-shirt, unshaven, sunk into the broken motel armchair when the knock came again, 3 short, polite raps. My heart punched once, hard, against my ribs. I moved slow, unsure if I wanted to answer. Part of me hoped it was no one. Part of me hoped it was Rachel, so I could tell her through the door to go to hell. But it wasn't her. It was Linda, Rachel's mother. She stood in the doorway in a gray cardigan and jeans, holding a paper bag in both hands. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, strands of gray peppering her blonde. She looked tired. Not just tired, aged. Like the last week had taken years from her. "Hi," she said gently, eyes scanning my face. "Can I come in?" I blinked, then stepped aside wordlessly. She walked in, glancing around the motel room like she didn't want to judge but couldn't help it. "You've been staying here all week?" I nodded. "Yep." She set the paper bag down on the chipped nightstand and sat at the edge of the bed, hands in her lap. I noticed the faint shake in them. Her wedding ring sparkled as she fiddled with a piece of loose thread on her sleeve. "I brought food," she said. "Chicken soup. You always like mine." I didn't answer, just watched her. She looked up at me and her face softened. Sadness etched deep into every line. "I didn't come here to talk about them," she said, voice steady. "I came because I'm worried about you." I snorted. "A little late for the concerned parent act, isn't it?" Linda flinched. "I deserve that." There was a beat of silence. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked finally, or at least suspected. She stared at the floor for a long moment before she nodded. Not the full truth. But yes, I saw how they looked at each other, how close they were. It stopped feeling innocent a while ago. My mouth went dry. "And you didn't say anything?" "I didn't have proof," she said softly. "And I didn't want to believe it. It's my daughter. And your mother. How do you even start to untangle something that fucked up?" We sat there in that awful silence, the kind where nothing feels right and everything hurts. She looked up again. "Rachel made her choices, Ethan. But so did your mother. I've known her a long time. She's always been intense, possessive, sometimes. I never thought she'd sleep with her own son's wife." I cut in. She nodded slowly, her eyes glassy. "Yeah." I collapsed back into the chair, elbows on my knees, hands rubbing my face. "God, what the hell even is this?" Linda didn't answer. She just opened the paper bag, took out a Tupperware container, a spoon, and a bottle of water. She placed them on the table like she had a right to be there, like she knew I needed something human and warm and real. "You haven't eaten," she said. "I can tell." I stared at the soup. My stomach growled at the smell, garlic, broth, herbs. Familiar, comforting. She waited patiently as I picked it up and started eating. The warmth spread through me like thawing ice. I didn't realize how starved I was until the spoon was scraping the bottom of the container. "Thanks," I muttered. She smiled, just barely. "You're welcome." After a long silence, she leaned back on the bed, legs crossed at the ankle, like we were just old friends catching up in a shitty motel. "You were always good for her, you know. Rachel. I used to worry she wouldn't end up with someone who saw her for who she really was." "Who is she really?" Linda looked at me with something like sorrow. A girl trying to break something inside herself by burning everything outside. I didn't reply. I just let the words settle. She stayed for another half hour, talking about nothing, TV shows, books, her garden. It was like she knew I couldn't talk about it. Not yet. She didn't pry. Didn't push. Just sat with me, in the silence, in the dust. Before she left, she rested a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry for what they did," she whispered. "And I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As she reached the door, she turned back. "I'll come by again tomorrow. I'll bring real food." "You don't have to," I said, barely above a whisper. "I know," she replied, "but I will." And then she was gone. For the first time in 6 days, I slept. Linda came back the next day. This time with lasagna, homemade. Still warm, layered with too much cheese and too much care. She didn't knock twice. Just one knock, and when I opened the door, she gave me a small, knowing smile and walked right in. She was wearing a sweater this time. Thick, navy blue, something about it looked well-worn. It had a softness to it that made the edges of everything else in the room feel harsh. I hadn't seen kindness in a week. I didn't know how much I needed it until it sat across from me again with a casserole dish. "You look less like a ghost today," she said, handing me a fork wrapped in a paper napkin. "You look like someone who should be somewhere else," I muttered, already digging in. "Maybe," she said. But I didn't want to be. We didn't talk for a while. The lasagna tasted like real life. Like home, the one I didn't have anymore. After I finished, I leaned back in the creaky motel chair, watching her from the corner of my eye. She was picking at the sleeve of her sweater, unraveling a thread, wrapping it around her pinky like a nervous tick. "What are you really doing here, Linda?" I asked finally. She looked up, eyes locking with mine. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "And I couldn't sit in that house anymore, pretending like the world hadn't cracked open." I nodded. "That made two of us." She stood and walked over to the small window, pulling back the curtain just enough to let a shaft of weak sunlight through. "I used to think Rachel just needed time," she said, voice soft. "That she'd grow out of this detachment. The way she pushed people away just when they got close." "She didn't push your way," I said, sharper than I meant to. Linda turned back around, her eyes unreadable. "No," she admitted. "Not me. But that's not love, Ethan. That's something else. Some broken part of her that latched onto something familiar, even if it was wrong." "You mean my mother?" She didn't answer. Just walked back, sat on the edge of the bed again, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "I think she resented how easy you made it look," Linda said after a pause. "Being loyal, grounded, ordinary. You gave her peace. And I think some part of her wanted chaos instead. That landed harder than I expected." "I gave her everything," I said quietly. "Everything I knew how to give." Linda reached for my hand, but stopped short, her fingers brushing the space just inches away. "I know." She told me more that day. About the way Rachel used to confide in her. Little things, how she hated stability, how comfort scared her, how she used to lie awake next to me wondering if she was living someone else's life. "She said you were too safe," Linda said, not unkindly. I let out a dry laugh. "Safe? Christ. That's the insult now. To someone like her?" "Yeah." We sat in silence, her words circling like ghosts around us. "She told me once," Linda added, "that the first time she met your mother, she felt understood in a way that scared her." I stiffened. "She said they talked for hours that night. After your engagement party. You were drunk, passed out on the couch. They were in the kitchen. That long ago?" Linda nodded. "I think that's when it started. Not the physical part, but the something. The tether." My stomach nodded. I remembered that night. I thought it was beautiful, two families blending, laughing, drinking wine. I'd fallen asleep smiling, Rachel's hand on my chest. And now, that memory turned to ash in my mind. Linda didn't offer any more details. She didn't have to. She just poured 2 glasses of wine from a bottle she'd brought, Merlot, Rachel's favorite. She handed one to me, and we sat side by side on the motel bed, not speaking. Just drinking. Just breathing. When the bottle was nearly gone, and the sun had dropped below the parking lot's edge, Linda said something that hung in the air like a confession. "I always envied how she looked at you," she said. "Before everything. Before the ruin. There was love there, real love. I saw it. Then what the hell happened?" She never believed she deserved it. We didn't touch, not then. But something changed in that moment. The air between us shifted. There was a heaviness to it, shared grief, maybe. Or the realization that we were the collateral damage of 2 women who didn't know how to love cleanly. Linda stood up to leave, slipping her coat on slowly. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said. "If you want." "I do," I said, before I could think better of it. She paused in the doorway. "Bring something warm in case we go for a walk. There's a little park nearby. You need to get out of this cave." I smiled faintly. "Bossy. You married her daughter. It's hereditary." The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in days, I felt the weight of something new pressing against my ribs, not grief. Not quite hope either. Something in between. Linda came again the next evening. No knock this time. Just the sound of her car door, the rhythmic crunch of gravel, and the soft click of the motel latch. I hadn't locked it. Maybe part of me was starting to need her visits more than I wanted to admit. She brought chili this time, in a thermos that smelled like cumin and slow-cooked forgiveness. We sat at the foot of the bed, no TV, no music, no distractions, just 2 people sharing warmth from a container and trying not to talk about the storm we were both still quietly standing in. She wore jeans and a soft gray top under a fleece-lined jacket. Her hair was down this time, and I noticed the faintest touch of red at her cheeks, maybe the cold, maybe the wine she'd already had, maybe even me. I brought a second spoon this time, she said, smiling, as if the small improvement in hospitality was a kind of joke. Didn't want to share again. I didn't mind, I replied. She didn't say anything, but the corners of her mouth curved slightly, and for a second, I could see the younger version of her. The one who used to dance barefoot at family barbecues and wink at me from across the grill when Rachel and my mother got too intense about side dishes. Do you ever think you missed your moment? She asked, staring into her bowl. With Rachel? I asked, puzzled. With your life, she said. Like maybe you zigged when you should have zagged. Chose something safe when you wanted something wild. The question hung in the air like a dare. I leaned back against the wall, stretching my legs. I used to think I had it all figured out, I said. Steady job, decent house, marriage that looked great from the outside. I thought that was the point. Build something stable. Something real. She nodded, thoughtful. But real things can break, too. I laughed softly. Apparently. Linda set the empty thermos down and stood, brushing off her jeans. She moved toward the little dresser near the motel window, where I'd tossed a hoodie days earlier. A simple navy blue thing, soft, worn, with the faded imprint of our college logo on the chest. Rachel used to steal it constantly. Linda picked it up gently, running her hand down the fabric, then turned toward me. This yours? Yeah. She used to wear it all the time, she said, almost wistfully. After fights. After sex. After wine. I remember that. I didn't reply. I just watched her. Her eyes weren't teary, but they had that look, the kind people wear when they're remembering a place they don't live in anymore. Do you want it? I asked. She looked at me, brows raised. It's cold out, I added. She hesitated for a second, then smiled. Thanks. She slipped it on. The sleeves were a little long, the fit loose. She hugged herself for warmth and turned back toward the mirror on the wall, smoothing the fabric down like she wasn't quite used to it yet. And God help me, I felt something. That hoodie, the one I used to see on Rachel in sleepy Sunday mornings, and lazy movie nights, and quiet moments of affection, looked different now. Looked better. Like it belonged on someone else. Like it had found a new story to be part of. Linda turned, catching my eyes in the mirror. Neither of us looked away. I should go, she said after a moment, reaching for her purse. Stay, I said. The word came out before I could stop it. Gentle. Not desperate. Just honest. She froze, hand resting on the strap of her bag. Then she exhaled and sat back down on the bed. I can stay a while, she said softly. But just to talk. That's all I need, I replied. And I meant it. We sat there like that, me in the chair, her on the bed, watching the motel ceiling blur into soft orange from the parking lot lights. There was no physical contact, no flirting, no suggestion of more. But there was closeness. The kind that lingers in silence. The kind you don't have to name. Eventually, she stood again and zipped her jacket over the hoodie. I'll bring something sweet next time. I've been craving cinnamon rolls. You bake. Only when I'm sad, she said with a small shrug. So lately, yeah. She opened the door, the cold night slipping in around her like a warning. Before she stepped out, I stopped her. Linda. She looked back. Thanks for wearing it, I said. She smiled. Thanks for offering it. And then she was gone, wrapped in the same comfort my wife used to take from me, but somehow it felt more right now. Less stolen. More shared. The door clicked softly behind her, and I realized, as the motel room settled back into its quiet hum, that it wasn't just grief I was feeling anymore. Something had shifted. Something was waking up. She didn't leave that night. It started the same way the others had: dinner, small talk, another bottle of wine. But something was different, and we both felt it. The silence between our words stretched longer, heavier, and yet more comfortable. Like the air knew we weren't pretending anymore. Linda had taken off her jacket the moment she came in. She wore the same hoodie I'd given her days earlier, sleeves pushed up, collar loosened. She looked, God, she looked warm, familiar, almost intimate without even trying. Her hair was down, tucked behind one ear, and when she leaned over the table to refill our glasses, I caught the scent of her, vanilla, cedar, and something deeper, something distinctly her. I noticed it when her knee brushed mine under the table. Not a touch meant to seduce, just closeness. But we didn't move. We didn't apologize. You ever think we'd end up here? She asked, voice soft, almost a whisper. In a motel room drinking cheap wine while the world burns outside? Her smile curved slowly. Yeah, that. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. No, never. Linda swirled the wine in her glass, watching it catch the glow from the flickering bedside lamp. Do you think it's wrong? I wanted to say yes. God, I should have said yes. But the truth sat too close to my skin now. I think everything that was right got torn down without asking us first, I said. Her eyes lifted to mine. And what we're building here, what is that? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. All I knew was the way her voice softened when she spoke to me now, the way her presence calmed the panic I'd been drowning in since that night in the kitchen. I should go, she said, suddenly standing. But she didn't reach for her jacket. She just hovered near the bed, one hand brushing the edge of the comforter. Linda, I started. I know, she said quickly. I shouldn't be here like this. You're still married. I'm still, she hesitated. Still Rachel's mother. Yeah, I said. You are. She turned to me fully, something breaking in her eyes. Guilt. Shame. Maybe just the heavy gravity of what was coming. I'm not trying to be her. I need you to know that. I know, I said. You're nothing like her. That's when it happened. She sat down beside me on the edge of the bed. Close, but not touching. Her hands trembled in her lap. If we cross this line, she said, there's no going back. I swallowed, heart thudding in my throat. We already crossed it. Her hand found mine slowly, fingers curling into my palm like a question waiting to be answered. I squeezed gently. When her lips touched mine, it wasn't fire, it was release. Like breath returning after being held too long. Her mouth was soft, careful, almost scared. And then I kissed her back. The taste of red wine, the smell of her skin, the quiet sound she made when I pulled her closer. It all blurred into something raw and electric. We didn't tear each other's clothes off like in some lust-fueled cliché. We moved slowly, tentatively, with the kind of caution that comes from knowing the world might collapse around you at any second. Her hands moved under my shirt, fingertips tracing the lines of my chest. I reached for her waist, the hem of her hoodie lifting just enough to expose the curve of her hip. She shivered, not from cold, but from the intimacy of being seen. Really seen. We made our way to the bed without speaking. When I peeled the hoodie from her shoulders, she let me, watching my face the entire time like she needed to know I wasn't doing this out of revenge or grief. And I wasn't. I wanted her. Not as a weapon against Rachel or my mother. I wanted her. The woman who fed me when I forgot to eat, who sat with me in silence, who wore my hoodie like it still held something sacred. When we lay down together, our bodies pressed close under the thin motel sheets. It wasn't sex driven by urgency. It was slow, deliberate, gentle. We whispered names, touched carefully, kissed like we were rebuilding something from pieces too shattered to name. And afterward, naked, breathless, tangled in one another, we didn't speak. Her head rested on my chest, fingers tracing lazy circles along my ribs. I ran my hand through her hair, thinking how strange and beautiful this all was. How tragic and tender and wrong and right. I didn't mean for this, she whispered. I didn't either. Do you regret it? I paused, kissed the top of her head. No, and I didn't. Not in that moment. Not when I closed my eyes with her body pressed against mine. Not even when I imagined what the fallout would look like. Because for once, I wasn't chasing answers. I wasn't surviving. I was living. And maybe that was the real betrayal of all. Not the kiss that shattered everything, but the one that put the pieces back together. The morning after didn't feel like a mistake. There was no guilt, no creeping shame, just the quiet hum of sunlight bleeding through the motel curtains, and Linda lying beside me, breathing slow and steady. Her body curled toward mine, one bare leg tangled with mine beneath the sheets, the hoodie she'd worn last night, now hanging over the back of the chair like some silent witness to our crossing of the line. I watched her sleep for a while, chest rising and falling with a rhythm that felt painfully intimate. I knew I should have been spiraling, should have been dissecting every consequence, every terrible what-if. But all I could think was, I feel okay. I feel alive. We got dressed slowly, wordlessly. There wasn't the usual awkward scramble, no avoiding eyes or false declarations. She smiled at me as she pulled on her jeans. I poured the motel's complimentary coffee into 2 cups like it was just another morning between people who understood each other a little better now. We didn't talk about what it meant. We didn't have to. That afternoon, Linda left quietly, promising she'd be back that evening with cinnamon rolls, just as she'd mentioned days ago. I teased her about that, Told her I didn't believe she could bake. She rolled her eyes and kissed me again, just once, just long enough to make me miss her before she even reached the door. And then came the knock. Not 30 minutes after she left. 3 sharp pounds. Not like Linda's gentle tap. Not even like a motel staff courtesy check. This knock had weight. I opened the door expecting, I don't even know, a cop, maybe, motel manager, some deranged neighbor from our past. But no, it was Rachel. Her eyes were puffy, rimmed with the red of 100 sleepless nights. Her hair was a mess, shoved into a loose bun, and her clothes were wrinkled like she hadn't changed since yesterday. Her breath hitched when she saw me, and then her eyes drifted past my shoulder, to the bathroom door, where Linda stood, wearing only a long t-shirt, my t-shirt. Her wet hair clung to her neck. Steam curled out behind her. Time stopped. Rachel's mouth opened, but no words came. Her gaze dropped to Linda's bare legs, then rose again to the neckline of the shirt that hung just a little too low. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The look on Rachel's face said it all. Her breath faltered. Her lip trembled. She looked at me like I was the villain in a play she'd forgotten she wasn't the star of anymore. And Linda? She didn't retreat. She didn't hide. She stepped into view fully, calm, collected, still drying her hair with a towel. Her eyes locked with Rachel's, mother to daughter, but there was no apology in her face. No regret. Just truth. Rachel's voice finally came. Quiet. Hoarse. Cracked. What the fuck is this? I stepped forward. Now you know how betrayal tastes. Her face crumpled like glass under pressure. You and my mother, she whispered, eyes wide with disbelief, with disgust, with heartbreak. How long? Long enough, I said. Rachel looked like she'd been hit by a truck. She stepped back once, then forward again, like she couldn't figure out if she wanted to scream or fall apart. Her hands curled into fists. You think this makes us even? She spat. Is that what this is? No, Linda said, her voice calm, cutting. This isn't revenge. This is what happens when you set fire to someone and expect them to wade in the ashes. Don't. Rachel snapped, glaring at her. Don't you dare act like you're innocent in this. You're my mother. And you were my daughter, Linda said softly. But that didn't stop you from destroying the one good man who ever looked at you like you mattered. That landed. Rachel reeled. She looked at me again, tears brimming now. You were supposed to love me. I did, I said. More than you ever deserved. A long silence. Rachel's eyes jumped from my face to Linda's, to the bed behind me, to the hoodie still hanging over the chair. I hope you're happy, she whispered, choking on her breath. You two deserve each other. Linda stepped beside me then, her hand brushing mine, but not possessive. Just present. Real. We didn't do this to hurt you, she said quietly. But that doesn't mean we'll pretend it didn't happen. Rachel's jaw worked, but no sound came out. She finally shook her head and turned, storming down the walkway in silence. The door slammed behind her. I stood frozen for a few seconds, waiting for my chest to explode, waiting for regret to come surging in. But it didn't. Just Linda's hand, now laced with mine. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For the look on her face. I looked down at our hands, intertwined like they belonged that way. She earned it. We didn't speak for a while after that. Just sat down on the edge of the bed, listening to the sounds of cars outside, of life moving on. Eventually, Linda broke the silence. You still want cinnamon rolls? I laughed. I couldn't help it. Hell yes. It didn't take long for the whispers to begin. Families, especially ours, have a way of talking even when no one says a word out loud. And when they do speak, it's always in half-truths, behind hands, over lukewarm coffee, and from the shadows of group texts no one admits exist. I knew the moment Rachel told my mother. Maybe she did it out of revenge. Maybe she wanted to take the bullet out of her own chest and fire it right back. Either way, it took less than 48 hours before the first message hit my phone. Uncle Ben. Hey. What's going on over there? Ethan? Your mom's not returning calls. Rachel said some things. Should we talk? I didn't reply. But then came the second. Cousin Lily. Heard something. Wild. Is it true you're living with her mother now? Like, with her? And then the third. Aunt Deb. We're canceling Sunday dinner this week. Mom's not feeling well. It's probably best to just let things settle. Yeah, let things settle. Like blood in water. By the end of the week, I wasn't being called the betrayed husband anymore. I was the one who snapped. The one who seduced his wife's mother. The one who broke the family. Funny, isn't it? How quickly people forget what started all of this. How suddenly the scandal becomes my fault. Meanwhile, Rachel and my mother were still together, still playing house in the ruins they built. I wasn't surprised. They always fed off the dysfunction. They wore each other like masks, Rachel becoming the cold, poised matriarch she never was, my mother shrinking into the wide-eyed rebel she never got to be when she was younger. And me? I stayed in the motel. Until the day Linda said, "Let's get out of here." We found a small rental an hour outside the city. 2 bedrooms. Old creaky floors. A porch swing that faced a field filled with nothing but wind and forgotten weeds. It was quiet. Peaceful. But it wasn't running away. It was choosing silence over noise. Choosing us over all the mess they tried to drown us in. Still, the whispers followed. One afternoon at the grocery store, a woman I barely knew from Rachel's side of the family walked past me in the frozen aisle. She didn't say hi. Just shook her head, loud enough for me to hear. That's him. That same night, I got a message from my mother. Just 3 words. "Mom, you're sick, Ethan." I stared at it for a long time. Not angry. Just numb. I could have responded. I could have reminded her of that kiss in the kitchen. The moment that shattered me. The fact that she was the one who blurred the lines first. But I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Because by then, I had photos. The kind you don't want to take. The kind that sit in your phone like landmines. I'd snapped them that night, Rachel and my mother locked in that kiss, hands gripping, mouths hungry. I hadn't even realized I'd done it. My phone must have been in my hand when I walked into the kitchen, still holding the plate I'd never eaten from. I never meant to release them. But when Rachel called me a coward during a phone call the next week, said I was hiding behind Linda, too weak to fight for anything I had sent them to Lily, to Ben, to Deb, to everyone who had called me sick. No caption, no explanation, just a single, high-resolution moment of undeniable truth. It took 12 minutes. 12 minutes for the first reply. "Uncle Ben, Jesus Christ, that's real? Lily, oh my God, I feel sick? She's her mother-in-law. Deb, what the hell is going on with your family?" And suddenly, the whispering stopped. No one was talking about me anymore. They were talking about them. The mother and daughter. The lovers. The wrecking ball and the fuse. For the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in sweat. Linda saw the messages. She didn't say much. Just slid her hand into mine and kissed my knuckles. "I didn't ask you to do that," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "But thank you." We spent that night on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, drinking tea as the sky bled into purple dusk. Linda rested her head on my shoulder, and we watched the last of the autumn leaves fall. That was the moment I realized we weren't hiding anymore. We were healing. Let them gossip. Let them judge. Because the truth was out. And it was ugly. But it was freeing too. It was a small house. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, creaky hardwood floors that groaned under every step, especially in the hallway at night. The kitchen tiles were chipped. The heater took too long to wake up in the morning. The front porch sagged a little to the left. But it was ours. Linda and I didn't call it home right away. For a while, it was just the house. A space between the disaster behind us and whatever came next. But the quiet started to stick. The scent of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. The way she laughed when I couldn't figure out how to fix the old screen door. The way she fit into my hoodie like she'd always been meant to wear it. It wasn't just healing. It was building. Not from scratch, but from scars. We made rules for ourselves early on. No talking about them over dinner. No checking social media for gossip. No digging through old memories unless we were ready for the pain that came with them. And slowly, the sharp edges dulled. I got used to seeing Linda's toothbrush next to mine. To the sound of her singing off-key while folding laundry. To the way she always overwatered the plants, convinced love alone could make them grow faster. It felt surreal. Every now and then, I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, like she still wasn't sure this was allowed. Like happiness was something she'd stolen and didn't know how to return. One night, curled up under a shared blanket on the couch, she whispered, "Do you ever miss her?" I didn't pretend to misunderstand. "No," I said. "I miss who I thought she was." She nodded. "Yeah, me too." We didn't cry. We didn't need to. That was the thing about trauma. You didn't have to bleed out every time to prove it still hurt. We just existed. Side by side. Steady. There was still tension, of course. No fairy tale endings here. Linda's daughter. My mother. They didn't vanish. They moved in together. An apartment downtown, from what we heard. Bold, like they had nothing to hide anymore. I didn't reach out. Neither did Linda. But word got around. Apparently, they were still exploring their relationship. Still toxic. Still electric. Still feeding each other's worst impulses under the guise of freedom. Let them. We were done carrying their weight. One Saturday afternoon, Linda and I went to a farmer's market in a nearby town. She wore one of my old flannels, rolled up at the sleeves, her hair pulled back, sunglasses on. I couldn't stop looking at her. Something about the way she held the fresh strawberries, the way she negotiated with the vendor like she'd known him for years. It made me want to memorize her all over again. At one point, a woman came up to us. Probably mid-40s, smart blouse, gold necklace. She looked at us like she was trying to put a puzzle together. "You're Ethan, right?" she asked. I tensed, already bracing. "Yes," I said carefully. "I thought so. I'm Denise. My sister knows Rachel." That told me all I needed. She smiled, but it was cautious. "Just wanted to say, I heard what happened. And I think it's amazing, actually, that you found something good after all that." I blinked. "You do?" She glanced at Linda, then back at me. "You survived something ridiculous. And you didn't let it turn you bitter. That's rare." She nodded at Linda. "And you look peaceful." "First time in a long time," Linda said, surprising both of us. Denise smiled, then walked away, basket in hand. We didn't say anything until we were back in the car, windows down, the wind tugging at Linda's hair. "I do feel peaceful," she said softly. "Not perfect, but lighter." "Me too," I said. "Still weird, though," she added, grinning. "We're two people in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Former in-laws. Bonded by betrayal. Sounds like the start of a bad Netflix drama," I said. She laughed. God, that laugh. But she didn't disagree. That night, we lit a fire in the backyard pit. Just the two of us, feet propped up on old crates, wine glasses in hand. The flames cracked and danced between us. "We should invite people sometime," Linda said. "Real people. Not family. Friends. New ones." I nodded. "Yeah, a new kind of family." Her eyes met mine across the firelight. Warm. Sure. Not hopeful. Certain. We weren't revenge. We weren't rebound. We were two broken hearts who chose each other, not to forget the damage, but to outgrow it. The world behind us had collapsed. But the one we were building? It was honest. Small. Quiet. But real. And this time, that was enough. It came in the mail on a Tuesday. Thick cream-colored envelope. Elegant, embossed lettering. No return address. Linda was sorting through the stack of junk mail when she paused, holding it up between two fingers like it might burn. "This looks fancy." She handed it to me, and I didn't need to open it to know. I could feel the weight of it. Even before I peeled back the seal, I could already hear the laughter, the arrogance, the self-satisfaction humming just beneath the surface. But I opened it anyway, together with their families. I stopped reading. My mouth went dry. Linda didn't speak, just leaned over to read it for herself. "Rachel Monroe and Margaret Dalton invite you to join them in celebration of their union." A wedding. A fucking wedding. My wife and my mother. Getting married. Like this was a love story, and not the wreckage of two families wrapped in denial. I dropped the invitation onto the table like it might explode. Linda just stared at it for a moment, her mouth twitching. I couldn't tell if she was about to cry or laugh. Then she did laugh. Sharp, dry, disbelieving. "They're really doing it." I nodded slowly. "Apparently." She picked up the RSVP card tucked inside. "There's a box to mark yes, with guest." "Bull. I guess they think we'll be too humiliated to show." Linda looked at me, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I felt clear. Strangely, blissfully clear. I picked up the RSVP card and grabbed a pen. I checked yes. Then I wrote Linda's name under guest. She blinked. "You're serious?" "They invited us," I said. "Let's give them what they want." The wedding was held in the garden of a rented estate north of the city, ivy-covered walls, lanterns hanging from tree branches, string quartet playing something delicate and insufferable. We arrived 20 minutes late. On purpose. The parking lot was full of imported cars. I could already hear the hum of conversation rising from the courtyard. The sound of people playing nice, pretending nothing strange was happening. Linda looked stunning. She wore a slate-gray dress with a neckline just daring enough to whisper power, and her hair was swept to one side in soft waves. Around her neck, She wore the thin silver chain I'd given her weeks ago, something simple, quiet, real. I wore the same suit I'd gotten married in. The first time. We walked in together, arm in arm, moving slowly down the garden path like we belonged there. Heads turned before we even reached the seating. Mouths parted. Forks paused mid-bite. And when we stepped into the main circle, dead. Silence. Rachel stood at the front, veil pulled back, hand clasped in my mother's. She saw us. Froze. Her eyes flickered to Linda first, then to my chest, where the tie she'd picked out for me 3 anniversaries ago still rested. Then back to my mother. My mother turned. Her smile faltered. I gave a small nod. My old wedding ring glinted on Linda's finger. The symbolism wasn't subtle. That was the point. We didn't sit. We didn't need to. We stood at the back of the ceremony, arms looped, heads held high. Let them sweat. Let them feel it. When the officiant asked the room to rise, we didn't move. When he asked for objections, no one spoke. But they didn't have to. The objection had already walked in with us. The ceremony ended quickly, rushed. No joy, just tension disguised as romance. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes as they turned to face the crowd, now wives. When it was over, people scattered like bugs, avoiding our gaze. Whispering again. Linda sipped champagne like it was tea, unbothered. "Do we stay for the cake?" she asked. I smirked. "Only if they choke on it." We stayed long enough to be seen. Long enough to leave a shadow across every photo. Long enough to ensure we would be the only thing people remembered from this day. And then we left. Back to the quiet. Back to the house that creaked. Back to cinnamon rolls and coffee and the kind of peace that doesn't need to be posted online to feel real. Back to the life we built, not out of rage, but survival. Not out of revenge, but something that came after. Something called freedom. Epilogue. I never responded to the thank you card they sent weeks later. But I kept it. Not for sentiment. For proof. Proof that sometimes, the worst betrayal leads to the most unexpected grace. That sometimes, walking away doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes, it means starting over. And in that second chance, I found the kind of love I never knew I could have. Quiet. Steady. Grown. Not given. A new kind of family. Ours.